Been an interesting week. First, we had big news that Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller convened a grand jury in his Russia investigation. That news was eclipsed by the fact that the FBI raided the home of Paul Manafort, the former campaign director for the Trump campaign. That news was even further clipped by the fact that the FBI executed a no-knock warrant, which we will discuss. But first, let's talk about grand juries. When news of the grand jury came out, and immediately the spin doctors went to work. If you were on the pro-Trump side of the House, you heard the spin doctors say that the grand jury meant nothing and it was insignificant, kind of a nothing burger. If you were on the anti-Trump side of the House, you heard everyone saying that this was a death knell, game over. As usual in politics, the truth is somewhere in the middle. A grand jury does represent a significant development in the investigation. More evidence is being discovered, more leads want to be pursued. They may want to get search warrants and arrest warrants, interview more people, subpoena more records. But it doesn't mean it's the end of the game. A grand jury may or may not return an indictment. Someone may or may not be arrested. And even if someone is arrested because of a grand jury indictment, it doesn't mean that they will be found guilty at a trial. So yes, it is a significant step, but no, it does not mean the death knell, game over. So just put that grand jury in perspective. I thought it'd be interesting for us to really understand what happens at a grand jury, what a grand jury is all about. And I thought we could have no better guest than our next guest, a friend of mine who has expertise in this. We're going to introduce Rachel Pelosi. She's a litigation partner in the Minneapolis office of the global law firm of DLA Piper, LLP. As United States Attorney for the District of Minnesota from 2006 to 2008, a time when I was fortunate enough to get to work with her, Rachel was the first Indian American woman to be nominated by the president and unanimously confirmed by the Senate to serve in any federal appointment. Rachel served for 15 years in high-level government positions and worked as an associate at Williams & Connolly, LLP. She received her JD from the Yale Law School, where she was a Coker Fellow. Please join us in welcoming Rachel Pelosi. Rachel, are you there?
It's nice to be with you this evening.
Hey, Rachel, thank you for joining us. You and I have a history of working together, and I have to tell you, working with you certainly was an honor in my career to have had that experience. And I want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you for our continued friendship. Rachel.
It was a pleasure to work with you as well, Michael. Privilege on both sides.
Thank you. Can you tell us, first, let's just get a general idea. Could you please explain to the viewers just what is a grand jury, how does it work in general terms?
Certainly. So a grand jury is basically a smaller version of the kinds of juries that you see operating in a federal courtroom. The grand jurors' names are pulled randomly from either voter registration rolls or driver's license records by authorities in a particular federal jurisdiction. And ultimately, 23 members are selected by the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the grand jury selects a foreperson, a deputy foreperson, and meets for generally an 18-month term. They need 16 members present at any given time to have quorum, and to return an indictment, they need 12 members to vote for a true bill. It's a serious commitment for an extended period of time, and it's an honorable commitment in service to our country. So the process itself, I can tell you further details about it, but the most important thing to know is it is a process that is supposed to operate completely in secret. There is not an adversarial process. There is no judge. There are no defense lawyers, and usually there is no defendant present unless he himself or herself is testifying before the grand jury. The determination ultimately that a grand jury needs to make is whether the accused should be charged with a crime, not whether someone is actually guilty of a crime. And in making that determination, they only hear from one side, the government. So the way in which a grand jury operates is much more one-sided than the way in which a petit jury, a trial jury, operates.
And, Rachel, some people might say, gee, that seems unfair. The defendant or the target doesn't have a chance to represent themselves. But it's no different than when we as FBI agents or police officers go in front of a judge for a search warrant, an arrest warrant. We don't have them defend themselves. It's one-sided. but we do have to make a showing of probable cause in order to take the next step. So would you say that's sort of a parallel in the process?
It's a good analogy, Michael. I think the difference with regard to the situation you've been discussing in the Mueller probe is that part of this is unfolding in a very public manner regarding the highest elected official in our country. And unfortunately, leaks and other information regarding what is supposed to be a process that is secret to protect the rights of a target are in fact unfolding in a very public manner.
Yes, leaks are very unfortunate, and I think on another show we're going to discuss leaks and the ethics behind using leaks in the media. Rachel, is the special prosecutor grand jury any different than a grand jury that you might have convened as a U.S. attorney? Other than the target itself, are the processes basically the same?
The processes are very similar. There are a couple of notable exceptions, Michael. First, this prosecutor, former FBI Director Mueller, has been granted extraordinarily wide jurisdiction. If you look at the order appointing him as special counsel, he has appointments to investigate a very broad range of conduct that involves not only alleged Russian interference in the election, but by the terms of the order itself, anything that he thinks is relevant. Moreover, another federal statute that may be in play here, for those who are lawyers or law enforcement officers, it's 18 U.S. Code Section 3333, empowers the grand jury to issue a report. Even if they don't return an indictment, that report could describe behavior that a grand jury finds perhaps not criminal, but troubling, particularly involving a public official. And there is some concern that a report issued under that particular federal statute could be the premise, the genesis for an eventual impeachment action against the president.
Very interesting. Now, when we talked earlier, we talked about the analogy between law enforcement and a grand jury. So in law enforcement, we talk about probable cause. When Mueller or any prosecutor decides that he or she wants to convene a grand jury, what must he or she do? Does he have to have a level of probable cause to do that? Must he make a presentation to a judge? Or is it strictly on the prosecutor's own discretion?
It's the latter, Michael. So Director Mueller has authority to present whatever evidence he wishes to the grand jury. That standard of probable cause really only applies to the ultimate finding of a true bill or no bill that the grand jury may or may not return.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about the relationship everyone discusses between the prosecutor and the grand jury. We all hear the saying that a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich if asked to. In your experience, do grand juries sort of fall under the influence of the prosecutor, or have you found that they are somewhat independent, respect the prosecutor, but will make a decision independent of that relationship?
I can tell you in my years of law enforcement, Michael, no grand jury failed to eventually return an indictment. Now, one could argue that it's because we had strong evidence and the jurors independently made an assessment of probable cause, but certainly as a defense attorney now, I would say that the process is a very one-sided process and one that has the potential to really put tremendous pressure on individuals, including perhaps wrongfully accused individuals.
So from what you're saying, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish, yes.
No, I was going to also say that I did certainly experience, though, grand jurors who were very involved in the investigative process, who were very interested in asking probing questions, who were fascinated by the legal system, and who certainly demonstrated very consistently to me over the years an interest in pursuing justice.
So do you have a concern that in general the grand jury system may not be fair?
Well, I think in this particular situation, there is certainly the potential for abuse. In general, the grand jury system has worked for our democracy for over 200 years, and it's a part of the Western legal tradition. It has been a part of the Western legal tradition for centuries. In this situation, though, the very involvement of a grand jury, even the appointment of a special counsel, was very much tied into political disputes between the president and his opponents. And as I mentioned at the outset of our discussion, so many things are unfolding in the public and being leaked that it's a substantially different process than what you typically see with a grand jury investigation.
And any process that one has some secretive nature to is exercised by authority, such as in the FBI, agents could abuse their authority, police could abuse their authority. Knowing what we know of Robert Mueller, and you and I both worked with him or for him in my case, does the public have any reason to believe that he is anything other than what he's mentioned as totally honest and trustworthy? Does the public have any reason to believe that under him there would be any abuse of power?
Well, we'll see at the end of this process, Michael, but my own personal experience with Director Mueller is he's an exceptionally talented and honorable man who has given much of his career to serve his country. Remember, however, that he is a part of a broader team, that he's working with other individuals, some of whom have given substantial amounts of money and support to the president's political opponents who have made very public statements regarding this president, and that he's also working with individuals in other parts of the Justice Department and components of that who may or may not support the president. I think this president has faced really unprecedented opposition when you compare the treatment of him with regard to prior presidents. And to have this kind of investigation unfolding at the inception of a president's tenure is really unprecedented.
It's unprecedented, but given the nature of the evidence that's out there, and of course we don't know really what is out there, it's just what we hear and what we think we know, do you feel that this grand jury investigation is not warranted?
Well, I think there's been some interesting commentary, Michael, on whether or not even the appointment of a special counsel was warranted. I think Andy McCarthy, who writes prolifically on NRO and whom many of your guests may remember as the blind shake prosecutor, and who is himself an honorable, long-time public servant and is certainly a brilliant man, has described in regular detail his concerns about the process which has unfolded here. So I think reasonable people can disagree on the president and their political views of him, but I think this process has many aspects to it which are certainly unusual, to say the least.
Okay, I think they're unusual, but again, the most unusual is it seems to have bipartisan support in Congress, both the process and Bob Mueller himself. I think that's unusual. So I think everyone feels that whatever it is, it's something that needs to be done. We have information out there that needs to get to the bottom of, and the public has a right to know that if the president or anybody in his campaign or his associates have committed a crime, I think they need to know we'll get to it and we'll get to it fairly.
I don't think there's any question that if anyone has committed a crime, no one is above the law. And our democracy that's a fundamental aspect of our democracy in which every American should believe.
And everyone's entitled to the protections under the law, including the President of the United States.
Everyone is entitled to the protections of the law, including the presumption of innocence. Agreed. Okay,
I agree. Rachel, thank you so much. It was great speaking with you.
Likewise, Michael. Thank you for having me as your guest.
Now, hopefully we'll do it again. Take care now.
Come on, let's go.
Just a minute, I gotta finish this.
Wait, you're gonna post those pictures of Mary?
Yep. She thinks she's so hot.
But her mom and dad will see them. Her grandmother, her little sister, everyone she knows, it's gonna kill her.
Who cares? Just a couple of pictures. It's no big deal.
No big deal? Don't. This has gotta stop.
As an FBI special agent on TV, I've solved strange and paranormal cases in short order. In reality, it takes months and even years to solve complex crimes, including terrorism, espionage, and cyber hacking. But since women first earned their FBI Special Agent badge in 1972, they've caught thousands of criminals. Thank you for choosing this challenging career and for keeping us safe. Happy anniversary.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hi, how you doing, Peter? We're back, everybody. We want to continue this conversation about the possible crimes being committed and what's being investigated by the grand jury and the FBI. We know that there was a search warrant at the home of Paul Manafort executed earlier this week. And one of the interesting aspects of it was the fact that we had what's called a no-knock warrant. Now, when I was working in the FBI and I was working narcotics, we used the no-knock warrant very often for obvious reasons. We were worried, one, about officer safety, and two, about the destruction of evidence. You knock on the door of some place processing drugs, and the water pressure in all of New York City would go down. So we had to be careful, and we wanted to get all the evidence. But this is an unusual case. Today we have with us Peter Norell, a former FBI agent with significant white-collar crime experience. Peter, in your opinion, how often do we see no-knock warrants used in a white-collar crime case?
Well, Michael, appreciate you having me on here. A no-knock warrant in a financial crimes or corruption case is extremely unusual. There's generally documents are generally saved on various computers and things of that nature, and it's very hard to destroy evidence quickly like there would be in drug cases. So there's really not a need for that. And additionally, a lot of those documents have been either emailed, sent, or at banks or other places like that where you can obtain them anyway. So the issuance of a no-knock warrant is extremely unusual, and I think more so in this case, as you had somebody who was cooperating with the investigation, or
right,
at least
right, because it was cooperating, and they have this no-knock warrant. What does that tell you?
It tells you that they don't believe that they're cooperating fully, that usually they don't believe that they have provided all the documentation they have. It causes some concern about the belief and the level of cooperation the person's providing.
All right, very interesting. Now, Peter, you and I have both worked white-collar crime cases and tracing the money. Knowing what we know or we think we know about Manafort, his financial dealings with the Russians, being this Russian investigation, what do you think the FBI is looking at now, and where do you think it's going to take them?
Well, I think Manafort is, one piece of the puzzle that they're looking at. I think specifically related to him, they're looking at financial ties, maybe undeclared income, maybe foreign bank accounts, all of those things that they want to use as either leverage for something bigger or just to try to understand how much the gentleman's cooperating with their investigation. So, everything that has at least been put out in the media indicates there's some evidence that the special prosecutor and the FBI believe he had financial ties, that he either didn't provide all that information to the government or has yet to do so, and maybe there's some tax issues related to that.
Right. So in your best guess, besides tax issues, you think we're looking at other crimes such as money laundering?
Oh yeah, every time there's a tax case, there's always issues of money laundering. You have to, money laundering is a very standard charge now in financial crime cases, especially in cases that involve tax or corruption cases, because you have to move around money and financial transactions, which are the basis.
Now, we read recently that the FBI was reaching out to FinCEN to help in the investigation. Can you explain to our viewers what FinCEN is and how that might fit into this investigation?
FinCEN is a database that has ties into all the banks, and the banks provide information to FinCEN about financial transactions. They do that in connection with the IRS with suspicious activity reports and things of that nature. But FinCEN has all that financial data available to them. So my guess is reaching out to FinCEN to confirm Manafort's stories or to try to uncover additional information about him and his ties to the Russian people.
Yeah, you know what? As usual, we once again have a little bit of a technical thing. I just lost audio. Pete, please stand by. We're going to take a little break and get you right back on in a moment. Viewers, please stand
Yes,
by.
sir.
We'll take a little break with the PSA and work out this little kink. Thank you.
Come on, let's go.
Just a minute, I gotta finish this.
Wait, you're gonna post those pictures of Mary?
Yep. She thinks she's so hot.
But her mom and dad will see them. Her grandmother, her little sister, everyone she knows, it's gonna kill her.
Who cares? Just a couple of pictures. It's no big deal.
No big deal? Don't. This has gotta stop.
As an FBI special agent on TV, I've solved strange and paranormal cases in short order. In reality, it takes months and even years to solve complex crimes, including terrorism, espionage, and cyber hacking. But since women first earned their FBI special agent badge in 1972, they've caught thousands of criminals. Thank you for choosing this challenging career and for keeping us safe. Happy anniversary.
Did you make the transfer to Hong Kong for the Emerson project?
I was just about to, but did you see the boss's email? It doesn't look right.
It looked fine to me.
I don't remember him mentioning the Emerson project at our last
The
meeting.
bank in Hong Kong closes in 15 minutes. Make the transfer.
Yes, sir. It's on the way.
Mr. Jacobs just transferred the money for the Emerson project.
What Emerson project?
Don't be that guy. Trust but verify.
Ms. Stevens, I just wiped malware off our system. People have got to stop clicking unsolicited email links and downloading free software unless it's from a trusted source.
Sounds great.
We need a data backup plan in a separate location to get hacked.
We need to focus on making profits, not spending them.
Learn to protect yourself from ransomware. If you become a victim, contact your local FBI office.
I can, yes, Michael. Well, I think they're trying to uncover as much of the truth. I don't see any issues with it. These are generally grand jury investigations do become widespread, and generally the nature of those grand jury investigations are secret. This one doesn't happen to be secret. So it's not unusual for a grand jury investigation to look at all kinds of issues. It may start out as corruption. It may move into financial crimes. It could move into all different areas. So that is not unusual of itself, and I don't think the special prosecutor is at all exceeding what he was authorized to do.
Waste the money and come full circle for a good strong case, right?
That's correct, and certainly in the modern day, it's much easier to track the money than it used to be many years ago. We have way more cooperation internationally post 9/11, so it's much easier to track the money, which means it's much more difficult to hide the money.
We recently learned that Paul Manafort's son-in-law, FBI, and I don't know if it was before or after the search warrant. I tend to think it was before. What does that kind of tell you? They spoke to him and then executed a search warrant. Does that kind of give us any bit of information as to what might be going on?
I am guessing and purely speculating that they're having some credibility issues with Mr. Manafort, and they're talking to people around him. I don't know what role his son-in-law had in any of the dealings with the party, the president, or any of the Russians. But certainly, it seems to me they're concerned about Mr. Manafort's credibility, and if he's cooperating, they're checking that against various sources, including family members. Nothing unusual about talking to family members who are outside the privilege reign to get more information.
Okay, very interesting. I tend to think somehow that that conversation with the son-in-law may have led to that search warrant. I don't know about the timing. I may be wrong, but it seemed kind of coincidental. So is it fair to say that it looks like, again, we can only speculate, but we have a no-knock search warrant served on somebody who's cooperating, talking to family. Paul Manafort may be in a lot of trouble. Would that be your hunch feeling at this point?
I certainly would be concerned if I was his counsel, and certainly concerned if I was him about his status with the government and the special prosecutor. I don't know if he's gone through the realm of witness, subject, target. That's pretty detailed and specific for maybe for this audience, but I would be concerned about my status as a witness if now they were doing a search warrant at my house. Absolutely.
And do you find anything unusual of the fact that this was sort of a counterintelligence investigation with a political atmosphere of potential collusion or cooperation between a foreign government and a campaign, that this would spread into a financial investigation? Does that strike you as odd?
No, not at all. It doesn't at all. I certainly think most corruption matters and most other matters involve some sort of financial dealings. People tend not to do things just for the good of things. They tend to have their own interest at heart, and I believe the Russians have some monetary interest in all of this at some point. I don't know what that's going to manifest itself as, but I certainly believe that most things like this end up with a financial crime aspect of it.
Very interesting. Peter Norrell, thank you. We know that since you're leaving the FBI, you now are a financial investigator for private firms. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, Michael.
And where can people find more information about your services?
You can email me at peternorrell2@gmail.com, or you can call me at area code 626-808-7919.
Thank you, Peter. It was nice speaking with you, buddy.
Pleasure was all mine, Michael. Thank you.
All right, everybody stand by. Our next guest is going to bring great insight into just what is a Russian foreign counterintelligence investigation. Our next guest is an experienced FBI agent who's worked Russian foreign counterintelligence, some of the biggest cases. Stand by. Oh, Mike Rufford.
Come on, let's go.
Just a minute, I gotta finish this.
Wait, you're gonna post those pictures of Mary?
Yep. She thinks she's so hot.
But her mom and dad will see them. Her grandmother, her little sister, everyone she knows, it's gonna kill her.
Who cares? Just a couple of pictures. It's no big deal.
No big deal? Don't. This has gotta stop.
As an FBI special agent on TV, I've solved strange and paranormal cases in short order. In reality, it takes months and even years to solve complex crimes, including terrorism, espionage, and cyber hacking. But since women first earned their FBI special agent badge in 1972, they've caught thousands of criminals. Thank you for choosing this challenging career and for keeping us safe. Happy anniversary.
Did you make the transfer to Hong Kong for the Emerson project?
I was just about to, but did you see the boss's email? It doesn't look right.
It looked fine to me.
I don't remember him mentioning the Emerson project at our last
The
meeting.
bank in Hong Kong closes in 15 minutes. Make the transfer.
Yes, sir. It's on the way.
Mr. Jacobs, just transferred the money for the Emerson project.
What Emerson project?
Don't be that guy. Trust but verify.
Miss Stevens, I just wiped malware off our system. People have got to stop clicking unsolicited email links and downloading free software unless it's from a trusted source.
Sounds great.
We need a data backup plan in a separate location in case we get hacked.
We need to focus on making profits, not spending them.
Learn to protect yourself from ransomware. If you become a victim, contact your local FBI office.
Come on, let's go.
Okay, folks, and we're back. And of course, nothing could go without a hitch. We're not getting a call in from our next guest who is supposed to speak specifically to Russian foreign counterintelligence. But I can just tell you there is a difference. The FBI has a concern of watching the intelligence activity of foreign nationals, what their interests are in the United States, in their operations. They try to turn agents against the United States to work for them. They do that through dangle operations where they offer us something or they try to compromise somebody. That's what intelligence operations are. They're different than criminal investigations in that we don't look to have a prosecution of anybody. We just want to identify who these spies are, who the foreign agents are working against us. When we find them, we may want to have them deported, or we may not. Sometimes knowing who they are is better than getting rid of them and trying to figure out who the next one is. Right now, we are, as our guests have said, in a very funny situation in politics. We have an ongoing investigation that is targeting, we know, at least members of a presidential campaign of the current sitting president, and may or may not implicate a sitting president. The grand jury is an important step forward, but again, as we said, it is not conclusive. Let's not draw conclusions, but let's not understate the importance of what the special prosecutor is doing. As Americans, we have a right to know what is going on. I believe we need more transparency from this administration. I do not believe in leaks, but unfortunately, they're going to happen. And when they get out there, I think we have every right to address the information that's out there as long as we are not compromising national security. We do have one question in here that came in through Daxton. He wants to know, when it comes to foreign counterintelligence, what do you do when you want a search warrant? A little different. We operate on what's called FISA. We get a FISA warrant. It's not like a criminal search warrant where we actually have to notify the person either at the time we do it or later. They're secretive in nature, and we don't have the same restrictions as to a criminal case because we're not, again, bringing anyone to justice. We're just collecting intelligence in our behalf. I want to thank everybody for joining. I'm sorry we couldn't get our third guest on. I think it would have been an interesting guest. Maybe next time. Good night, everybody, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.